wholeness comes from the inside out.
When we're living congruently with our values, there's happiness because there is that sense of wholeness.
Wholeness is when the way of your being matches the truth of your being.
This is part 2 of my conversation with Hugh Vail. In this episode, we dive deep into more of the ways that our shadow is an important ingredient for our shine. If you haven't already, please subscribe, write a positive review, and share this podcast. Do you know anything about Gabor Mate? Have you ever looked?
Oh, he's only one of my favorite authors and podcasters. Like every morning I just search his name to see what new thing got posted on the internet from him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you seen there's a little YouTube video, but I think it's by After School. It's a cartoonish. It's him talking and it's like a cartoon.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
I'll have to link to it.
Yeah.
So, and he's just talking about a particular aspect of humanity, of humans, is that we are born, and I love the way, and Brene, when she says we are wired for connection, I mean, like, that's the thing. This is a biological need. This is not a psychological thought process, cognitive choice. This is a biological need for autonomy and attachment, which feels like opposites, right? But I think that goes along your sovereignty.
Yeah. It's to walk alone together.
Yes. Because
when you graduate from, I like your metaphor, so I keep going back to it. But when we graduate from the 2D square to the 3D cube, right? What part of the graduation is that we have to start operating by paradoxes, right? And that's a paradox, to walk alone together.
Yes,
that's a paradox.
That's a paradox.
Yeah. And, from the research, I've read enough of the research to understand that when they are talking about attachment, they're talking about emotional connection.
Yeah.
Because so much in the healing spiritual space right now is like, don't have attachments.
Right.
And there's two different definitions to that one word.
True.
And so autonomy plus connection.
Yes.
Is sovereignty.
Yes.
That's the ability to walk alone. I'm independent, but I choose you. Now, I would never choose anyone who wasn't like me, because we can only attract what we are, not what we want.
Right.
So the sovereign will always attract the sovereign. The
Right.
secure always attract the secure.
Yeah.
The insecure always attract a form of insecure. And so, but yeah, the autonomy plus the attachment or the connection. That's sovereignty.
Yeah. And he even goes into that video about the kinds of things that we do. So I think he gives an example of, like, when we're young and we reach into a cookie jar to get some cookies and we get in trouble. So our autonomy for wanting a cookie is in conflict with our connection or attachment, because our mom or dad or whoever is getting angry at us.
Yes, I've heard him talk about that.
Yeah. So that we will, so these parts of us that we cut off, we cut off that autonomy over and over again in order to keep that attachment. And that's what I'm hearing you, so then, and then I think then we get to be adults and we are not whole because we've cut off ourselves.
Yes.
In the belief that we will not have that connection or attachment. And that, to me, that threatening of attachment or connection is like the top tier problem in our society. If we didn't have threat of disconnection, then I just, maybe I'll change my mind in a minute, but that's like, I just think that is the ultimate fear from our biology, and that we would even sacrifice our autonomy to have that attachment.
Yeah, I think that is a chapter in the short verse of the creation story,
Yes.
when Adam is told it is not good for man to be alone. I think when we dive into the science behind that, what we're talking about is this deep innate desire in the nervous system to do things with others,
right,
to be in a family, to be in the herd dynamic or the pack dynamic.
right.
It is within nature's biological portfolio to say, I'm going to be better off when I have others with me. And our nervous system is hardwired to understand that. The limbic brain just knows that. And so I will compromise my autonomy to be in family. I'll compromise my connection to try to be autonomous, right? Like
yes,
it just kind of depends on the personality and which one that they're going to do, because we need them both and they feel like they're a paradox, right? So and I think that's actually, if we could read a chapter in the creation story of mankind, we would find this whole chapter to be about the mirror and about sovereignty and about the nervous system and how to obtain all of that. And our current society has no idea.
Right. I know.
None ideas.
And somehow I take it upon myself that I need to teach society.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's so.
I do the same thing.
I know. It's like, this is like, we can change everything. We can change everything when we understand some of these simple tools. And like you say, back, even rewinding, I would agree with you. When I move into this bigger place, and that's the thing, when I understand this, then that acceptance of people like becomes so much easier when I understand when I allow for wholeness to be part of who they are, including the shadow, including the light. And I like your shine, your shadow and shine. I really like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just the love multiplies. I mean, it just exponentially when I can start to see people as whole beings, and there's wounds and traumas that we look at and discover. I mean, so I've done a lot of trauma training, and to really understand trauma as not an event, but as a injury to the nervous system.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to heal. We're not trying to make that traumatic event disappear. It's not possible.
Right.
But that there's an injury to that nervous system, and that's what's causing havoc. And that's what we're trying to look at. But it has nothing to do with your wholeness. It's an injury.
Yeah. And that injury creates a belief. And then that belief resides down at the atomic level, according to the science of Bruce Lipton.
And it starts making the decisions. It starts making the decisions.
Yeah.
And even then, looking at people, highly trauma. I've gotten to where I can, everybody's traumatized, but these highly traumatized people, and you recognize they're living in this motion of life that is not even half under their control.
Yeah, not at all. But that's the unawakened man or the unawakened woman.
Yeah.
It's that my nervous system is running everything and I have no conscious awareness of it.
Right.
And that's what makes me a victim.
Yes.
Right. Because I don't want these things to show up in my life, but they keep showing up. And it's like, well, so here's what happened about a year ago. I had significant loss in my life that I had chosen to, and became more loss and more pain than I was anticipating. And then I was like, this keeps happening in my life. And through a series of meditations, I was thinking about, prayers I was praying, all of it, I heard this feeling. And what the feeling said to me was, the first healing miracle that Jesus ever performed was healing his own emotional wounds and traumas.
Mm.
And all other types of healing come after.
Mm.
And I said back, just in my own programmed belief that I was completely unaware that I had, I replied back and said, how is that possible? Because he was flawless, because he's perfect, right? And the feeling said back to me, he was, and it ended up quoting Isaiah 53 and 54. It said he was abandoned, abused, betrayed, rejected, and despised. How could he not have emotional wounds and traumas, having gone through those types of experiences? And I said back, because he's flawless and he's perfect. That's what makes him flawless. That's what makes Jesus Jesus, is because he can go through those
didn't
things,
affect those.
and then they didn't affect him.
Wow. And yet those are that's the, okay, keep going.
So spirit, my higher self, God, whatever,
Right.
the feeling said back to me, then he would not have had the full human experience,
right,
and therefore would not be relatable to anyone.
Right.
What that's really saying is then he wouldn't be the mirror. Because if you're the mirror, you're completely relatable. And if I'm the mirror, I'm completely relatable, and we're all having the same human experience.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So a significant change in my belief about the man Jesus was that he had deep emotional wounds and traumas, which completely compromises the story of the perfect royal family.
Yeah.
It also completely compromises the story of him being flawless and perfect in that sense.
Right.
And then he started actually becoming really, really relatable when I'm 41 years old and have already studied everything and rewriting the New Testament. And it was like, oh, he has emotional wounds and traumas. So the ability to heal our emotional wounds and traumas, like the first healing miracle Jesus ever performed was healing his own emotional wounds and traumas. All other types of miracles come after that.
Right.
To me, that makes perfect sense. And it's like, oh, that's my number one priority. Why am I not seeing the miracles that I know are available and I know that are possible? Because I'm living life filtered through my emotional wounds and traumas, and I just need to go make peace with those. That's where I think Eckhart Tolle comes in with his teachings and philosophy about it, how we actually make peace with things. Hey, that was a big shift in my life.
And I like the word, I think the significant word is that relatability, then what happens is relate becomes that's the relationship. That's the relationship.
Yeah.
It's the ability to relate.
It's totally founded in enoughness, which is empathy.
Yes.
Which is why there is no judgment.
Right.
Right. Which is really interesting. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 1, you've got the Sermon of the Mount is kind of coming to a close. And chapter 7, verse 1 is, do not judge lest ye be judged. In Greek, it says, do not make a determination as to what is wrong. Because if I make a determination as to what is wrong, I'm now basically putting myself in this little box, and I'm saying inside my box is all the right things. And so I'm implying that I also know what is all the right.
Yes.
And then then there are some things that could move you forward, but many things that could move you not forward. See, now we're limiting our and that's okay. There's a place in the duality for that.
Right.
But there's not a place in the world of the cube or the plurality for that way of thinking. It's a lower vibrational way of thinking. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's not that it's not wrong. It's just doesn't fit in that particular realm of being. And so I started thinking like, oh, okay, well, why would Jesus judge me if in his greatest sermon, he's telling all of us to not judge? Right. And I'm like, well, that's a contradiction. That's not a paradox. That's a contradiction. That's ironic. And so there is no judgment from the one who is relatable, and we're all relatable when we have awakened to what the human experience really is.
And I think I wrote a post about it, but it was like, what if the final judgment was really the day I stopped judging. Do you know what I mean? Like, what if it was about me? What if I could get to this point where I have a final judgment, and then
yes.
That's what I hope on my best days. I'm working toward that, like, what if that's really more about me and my judgment than being judged?
It is. I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And
the final judgment is the God within finally stopping
the judgment.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's profound.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Final. I'm like done with
I'm adding that to my arsenal of all the things I run around.
Great. I'm pleasured by that. That's awesome. So my question, so tell me about when you move into this place of having this mirror, right? And we might have already talked about it, so you can just say, I already said that. But when you've moved into this place of really embracing a mirror, and it feels to me when you say that there was this enlightenment to your being, you know what I mean? That it was an uplifting, like an aha moment. It was transformational.
It was a moment of deep clarity.
Yes. And then, so tell me about those sensations. So what is that like? So we had to go through the painful of seeing the mirror, but with this different perspective, how did that shift things? Was there still the pain? I mean, we have our days, but like, what did that add to you? What was enlightened about that? Meaning the heaviness, what heaviness departed with that enlightenment? What was that like?
Yeah, I think that's what happens, and again, I think the life of Jesus is really just this modeled life of what we're all to experience.
Right.
And he says, my burden is light. Right. And I think that's what happens, is that when you realize the mirror, it is my true form of the atonement.
Yeah.
Meant, when it's, a suffix of a word, it comes from the Latin, which means mind. And so I become at one in my own mind.
Yes.
And that's where my prefrontal cortex is, my storyteller. The storyteller, or the prefrontal cortex, comes in two camps. It's the way I interpret the story, then how I go and tell that interpretation to others, or, most particularly myself.
Yes.
So what happened with the mirror is that it changed my interpretation of all things that were happening around me. Nothing then was happening to me. Everything was happening for me, because I became the co-creator of it all. I had to become very, very comfortable with then looking at the painful things that I was co-creating. And the painful things stopped torturing me and started teaching me.
And that shifts those emotions you're going to have about it. That changes the emotions you're going to have about it. They shift.
Yeah, the emotions then became my messengers. And they said, hey, let's take a look at this circumstance, and here's the message. Right? It's like anger all of a sudden became a message of how to protect boundaries that I had compromised. And instead of thinking, oh, you had done this to me, it was, oh, I have been doing that to me somewhere else in my life. Therefore, I set myself up that I could be in a position where you could also do that to me. It's just when you did it to me, I wasn't willing to put up with it anymore. But it was not about you. It was, thank you for showing me where I'm compromising my own boundaries and I'm not being totally loyal to me. And the anger became the emotion that was teaching me, like, hey, look, let's go look at somewhere where we're not holding our own boundaries with ourselves.
Yeah. Right. Or where were the wounds?
Right.
Anger is
Yeah, that's where the empathy comes in. Is
Yeah.
like, okay, why am I doing this? What is this
Right.
belief? And so then I'm diving into the origin of the wound,
Mhm.
which is different than the pattern of the wound.
Right.
Right. And so then I'm coming back to a place, maybe it's in my childhood or maybe it's in my teen years. It's somewhere where this belief about me was accepted.
Mhm.
And then it was like, oh, well, of course I was doing that to myself. Why would I have been doing anything else when I believed this way about me? I
Right.
can't do anything else. See, there's empathy.
Yeah. Anger is the fight, flight, freeze, or appease.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
that's one way to look at it, and
Yep.
so yeah, and then when we can separate that out between, and like you say, if we can just filter out the shame and look at it from this perspective of sequence and saying, of course I would do that, having this and this and this and this happen, which to me is full empathy. Of course that would be my action in that situation. And again, when we do that to ourselves, then it becomes natural to do it to other people.
Yep.
And yeah.
I was working with a friend who was really brilliant with this concept of the mirror. She had an incredible working knowledge of it. And I would call her up. This is like a year ago. We spent months of me trying to talk through this. And the thing she kept saying, and it used to frustrate me in the beginning, is she would be like, oh, of course. And I'd be like, don't say of course. It's not of course. And she'd be like, of course. Like the answer is, of course that was happening. Look at this, this, and this. And she was the one that caused me to start looking at the emotional wounds and the traumas that I had, the beliefs that came from that. And there come the patterns.
Yeah.
And so once you could see that little formula and you see that sequence of how it works, the only answer you have is, oh, well, of course you did that.
Yeah. Right.
And there's no judgment in it. It's just like, yeah, of course you did it.
Of course you would do that.
And if it's painful enough, well, then you'll go change it. And here's the thing that if I had one message I wish I could just get everyone to understand is that empathy does not promote apathy. Empathy is like, oh, of course it was. Okay, don't want to do that anymore. Now I'm going to start making adjustments. Right. Apathy would just be like, oh, of course it was. It's fine. I'm just keep doing that.
Right.
And empathy does not promote apathy. Empathy promotes excellence. Empathy promotes more change, more honesty, more accountability, more appreciation for what it's teaching, right? Because I'm not being tortured by it. It's painful, but I'm being taught by it. And if I can account for it without finding fault, then I'm going to integrate the lessons that I'm learning because it came at a high price. But empathy is what gets me there. Empathy is what opens up awareness and consciousness. Why would I admit my faults? Why would I embrace my shadow if it's only going to be met with shame? Right. Brene Brown's saying empathy is the antidote to shame.
Yes.
So empathy is actually where all the virtue and all the excellence comes from is empathy. I continue to repeat my wounded patterns and my traumas, and those beliefs never go away until I get empathy. Empathy is what changes everything, because empathy, as our friend Jeff Olson says, empathy is oneness. It's at one in my own mind because now I have empathy for all that I've done. Yes.
And the opposite, they say the opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy, which you were saying, it's apathy. So if we even follow that, what you were talking about with apathy, that's the thing. So then the opposite is this unconditional love.
Yes.
This full acceptance and empathy. And I think that's what's interesting. I think people get a sense of that in a way that's different than any other experience when they come and be with you and your Mustangs, your horses.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly.
And that's the special part that they can play in healing.
Yeah, because when you watch the Mustang behaving from his his nervous system, his dysregulated nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the things that he struggles with and the things that he does, and you see how he makes his life a little bit more difficult than what it needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
What you see is, oh, well, it's okay, buddy.
Yeah.
You got this. I don't care that you just broke the fence, or I don't care that you just, banged up your knee or whatever it is. Like, you're enough, and I'm here to help you and serve you, and I can hold space for you. It's a mirror. What I'm really saying is that, I've got an opportunity to have enough empathy for my own nervous system where it's wounded, and where I've had to learn how to survive and do these things that don't serve me, that don't serve others. But I've got enough empathy to go there. So an interesting point, and I'm just connecting it right now, is that those who I've never had somebody be in resistance in the presentations or in the 4-day immersives. Everyone that's there eventually loves it, and we put it in enough context, and I've got enough great facilitators to help with that. It's those who can only observe it from a distance and then can't look at it. They're too afraid of the mirror. And what I realized is that's because they're that full of shame. There is no space for empathy. I can't hold enough. Like, if I have to watch that Mustang, and I see myself in the struggles of that horse, and I can't find empathy for myself. So they walk away. I've really only known 2 people out of thousands. Neither of those 2 people have watched or participated in the entire experience. They could only handle a small portion of it. It wasn't because they disagreed with it. It was because they're so filled with shame. They just couldn't have empathy for themselves.
Wow. I feel, when you tell me that, I feel disembodied, even just, like there's no capacity because we're not fully embodied.
Yeah.
So something maybe was so painful we felt we needed to exit, and again, like we need this physical body to be the container for our thoughts and emotions.
Yes.
And so if I'm not in my body, I can't conjure it.
Yeah. And so then it tells you how deep the pain actually is for those. And then once I see it from that perspective, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay,
right.
what can I do to help? What can I do to I'm just filled with empathy. Maybe there's nothing I can do, but I'm just filled with empathy.
Totally.
That's all that I have.
Right. Because I know, had I walked their trail,
I would be the same way.
My
nervous system would have done the same thing. I'd have had the same wounds.
Right. It perfectly chose the safest route.
Yep.
Perfectly.
Yep. And it still is choosing the route it believes to be the safest.
Right.
It can't do anything else. It'd be a shitty nervous system if it did anything else other than that.
Right.
So it's actually a really healthy, it is a properly functioning nervous system when it chooses that.
Yeah. And that's where I see where that true belonging, which, I mean, and belonging to ourselves, but then having another help, or not help us belong to ourselves, but someone holding space, someone that we can lean, that we can have in relationship with or be relatable with.
Yes.
Is really healing. That
it's
they can't do
way.
It for us. They can't do it for us.
But they can hold the space for us.
Right.
And likewise, we couldn't have been hurt by ourselves.
Right.
Carl Jung says, we do not get wounded alone, and we do not heal alone.
And Harville Hendrix, do you know who Harville Hendrix is?
So
he is him and his wife are the most do you know the Gottmans?
Oh yeah.
He's like, him and his wife are like the other Gottmans. That's
Okay,
terrible to say,
gotcha.
but they're marriage therapists, you know, and a couple and things like that. And I love he says we are, I'm going to say it wrong, but it's like we are wounded and healed in relationship. Like
100%.
it's all about relationship. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And yet, and like you say, it is a fine line maybe between codependency and healing in a relationship.
Yes.
You know, we got to make sure we're not, you could go into codependency really quickly.
Yes.
But that we are healing in this relationship.
Yeah, studying all these brilliant authors and these brilliant minds and philosophies, going through my own deep pain and sorrow, making peace with my shadow. I've spent the last year writing a formula for how to do that, how to remain in the relationship while not being codependent and working towards letting go of codependency and working towards sovereignty. And so far, I've got a bunch of therapists that have actually said how you piece this together is freaking brilliant. Miracles that happen when we heal our emotional wounds and traumas.
Yes. Well, when are you going to share this formula?
I share it in the 4-day immersives that we do. I'm trying to figure out a way to like put it on a whiteboard. I probably just need to pay one of those companies that do those whiteboard drawings, you know, where it voices over and they draw it out. I've got to figure out a medium to get it on YouTube, or a way to be able to get it on YouTube in an effective manner. So yeah, I've only had it for about 8 months now in completion. And we've had probably just under 1,000 people that have seen it. And my ability to articulate it and I've talked a lot about it. It's everything we've been chatting about. I just put it into like a formula, like a recipe that you could actually follow and go, oh, this is where I'm at. Oh, this is my codependency that's showing up. Oh, this is how I'm changing the story and changing the narrative, and I'm becoming a co-creator, and I'm honoring that part of it. So largely what we've talked about, I just simplified it so you could like look at it like a cookbook.
Yes.
Or a blueprint.
Yes. And I know you're interested in the Enneagram.
Oh yeah.
You like the Enneagram. So what type are you? What Enneagram number are you?
I think I was a 7 if I remember.
Okay.
I'd have to go look at the result. I took it, and I was with some friends, and then they read the book and they were like, oh, this makes so much sense. And we were like in an outing event, and so I wasn't fully engaged, but I'm pretty sure I was a 7.
Well, I mean, just because I think that's another piece is, for me, the Enneagram helped me see a little bit of my virtues and vices and how they both work together inside me. And how and it helped me to let go, to have empathy, and to let go of the judgment of certain things. Do you know what I mean? Like it was, that's the tool that I like about that the most.
The one I've been involved with for probably the last 5 or 6 months, oddly, how I got involved with this mostly because of friends and community, because they're so in it. So they're constantly like, oh, this is because of this. And then they're reading me this stuff, and I've then spent way too many hours on TikTok watching people who are experts in this. But it's human design. Have you got into human design?
I've heard of it. I've heard of it.
Yes. And that helped me. I arrived at the same. It was bizarre. It's bizarre how accurate my human design profile is to my life, to my personality. Like bizarre.
So what is your human? Tell me what I'm trying to think of what I was. I could. What's your? Isn't it like a name? Like a.
Yeah. So in my human design, I'm a projector.
Okay.
And I mean, for whoever's watching this, if they're into it, I'm a projector, emotional authority.
Okay.
And a 2/4 hermit.
Oh wow. Okay.
Some of that stuff I don't fully understand.
Right.
The projector part, just the general, profile or portfolio of a projector fit me perfectly.
Right.
In fact, I then started using it with my inner circle, my closest friends, and I said, "Hey, read this about," and they were like, "Oh my gosh!" So I got them to do it, and then I read about them, and we have improved our relationship because they now understand. They're like, "Oh, that's why you always want to take naps. We were just trying to like convince ourselves that you weren't lazy," and I'm like, I don't generate my own energy. I feed off of other people, and then I get exhausted, and then I got to go take a nap, and then I feel good enough to. And I
Wow.
shamed myself for so many years, just because I didn't understand this. But here, this profile is laying it all out there, and oddly bizarre that it was so accurate.
So I think, is there a thing called a manifesting generator?
Is that what you are?
I think that's what I am. I don't know exactly what that means.
That makes perfect sense. I know enough about it, but
Okay.
but basically you manifest and you generate. You're like, oh, here's my idea, and we're gonna go do it, and then you do all the work, all the little like checklists and checkbox to make sure it gets done right, and you just go. I'm like the complete opposite. I'm like, here's the vision, here's how it needs to be. I gotta go take a nap now.
Well, and it's so funny because when you're like, we got to get it up, I'm like, okay, at the end, I'll talk to you about maybe like we have some tools. Maybe we could get that up on the internet together.
Yeah.
I'll do all the background, getting all that thing, getting your equation up on the internet.
Yeah. In probably in like 3 years from now, I've taken a long enough nap, and I'm like, I'm going to call a company that will do that and get that done for me. Like, that's how long it'll take.
Interesting. Well,
I need generators, and I need manifesting generators in my life. They have to be a part of my inner circle for everything we do with the 4-day immersives. Are made up of manifesting generators and generators. They're the ones that actually put everything together and make it happen so people can come out and have a good experience. Then what's really funny, and we didn't plan this because it all happened it happened prior to me understanding human design. The facilitators that do the facilitation, we do sweat lodges, we do cold water plunges, we do all of them are projectors, and that's what projectors do really well. So we ended up getting this really cool group of people together, and human design helped us.
Tell us about those events. Tell us about those things.
I looked at I think that most retreats are pretty fluff. I think most retreats are really for people who are overwhelmed, and cortisol is pumping through their daily life. Their nervous systems are so dysregulated. And so they need a retreat from the chaotic dysregulation of their nervous system and all the cortisol and adrenaline that's constantly running through it. So they go to a retreat, and what they're filled with, what I call fluff, but they're really filled with really good food. It doesn't even necessarily have to be nutritious food. They're just filled with dopamine.
Yeah, I was just going to say dopamine hits. That's exactly what I was just
going to say.
That's
all most retreats are.
Yes.
And I used to be pretty in judgment of them. I believe that there's a place for them. That's not what ours is. Ours are for the people who are saying, I have done the work. I've read Eckhart Tolle. I've read Richard Rohr. I've read Jordan Peterson, Brene Brown. I'm trying to figure out what are actual things I can do to embody all that I know. And so our 4-day immersive is really just an embodiment of all of that. Gabor Mate stuff. It's like, here's the things where you can learn to really negotiate with your nervous system, understand your wholeness. So we have a mixture of IQ, all the knowledge and the study. And to come out to our retreats is not the easiest thing to do, because we send out videos and articles that we've written and everything, because we want you to have the IQ before you show up, because we want to maximize the mileage that we get with our guests to where it's all EQ. The change actually happens in the embodiment of the emotional intelligence. We're repeating the patterns that we're repeating, not because of the knowledge that we have, but because of the lack of emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. And that's where the emotional wounds and the traumas are getting in the way. So we help people identify that and then be able to embody the emotional intelligence and maturity by just changing the narrative around what's going on and giving them actual tools to regulate their nervous system and have experiences with that. That's how I would define it. It's probably the best way I've ever defined it, actually.
Well, good. For some reason, somewhere along our humanity, all the layers of shame and that we have put on the physical, just in the physical body, just on the physical body.
Yeah.
Just even that it's bad, ugly,
right,
smelly, even just those things get
that
so
it needs to
layered
be
upon.
different than what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so why are we wanting to be in this? So all of that layered on top of our nervous system issues, you know what I mean? So I hear you saying that, this dysregulation, those are physical, that's like a physical manifestation of, I don't want to be in this body. It feels very uncomfortable to be in this body. That is dysregulation.
Yeah, because have you got into Bessel van der Kolk?
I took a training from him.
Oh my gosh, he's amazing. I love all of his stuff. And he's got this quote, I just posted it the other day. He says, trauma is defined by not feeling seen or known.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is that the nervous system feels regulated, is in the parasympathetic state when the body feels seen and heard. So when I can feel seen and heard, I'll feel like I belong. I'll feel like I'm accepted because I feel seen and heard. The nervous system then regulates, and I step into the parasympathetic state. So that, which is really interesting, because then that might put a new translation or a new interpretation on what Jesus was talking about when he said that if you lived this way, you would then have eyes to see and ears to hear.
Wow.
What is it that you're seeing? Well, you're seeing yourself. What is it that you're hearing? You're hearing yourself. And now that I can do those to me, I can then hold space and do that for you. Now I'm really in a true community, because there's no blaming, there's no complaining, there's no shaming, even though we still have our deficiencies, because I fully see myself and I fully hear myself. Now I fully belong to myself. I fully accept myself. That's how the nervous system defines feeling safe or safety.
Yes.
And so what we do, our number one review, we literally have the best reviews. It's just incredible, because I say it's incredible because how we've been able to embody it all and provide an experience for those who attend is really incredible. It's not me, it's the facilitators. It's like how we dance together.
Yeah.
It's not the things we actually do, it's how we do it. And the number one thing that we get back feedback on is, I finally felt seen and heard.
Wow. That is healing. That is the ultimate healer. And you speak about even Jesus and his miracles, and that's the thing. He always asked, "What do you want?" It was never he never assumed.
Yeah.
He never assumed that the blind man wanted to see.
Yeah.
He asked, "What do you want?" He saw. He heard and listened and saw them as they wanted to be seen, not as he projected upon them. And
exactly,
that was the true healing, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Of course, you're read in and researching all the same things that I am. That's of no surprise.
Yeah. So when you listen to I think there's 3 seasons of learning how to see, and there's only like 8 or 9 episodes, so you can get through it. So when you're done, because you will love it. You will love it. And I will send you a link to
send me
the
video. Link, and I will dive in on it.
And then and so when so afterwards, so just while you're watching this or listening to it, like when I mean, so I get to meet with this Brian McLaren, and he yeah, he's a member of the Center for Action and Contemplation, and he, when he says, I'd like to stay in touch, like,
yeah,
like, okay, yes, like, it's your people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
of course he would feel that way, right?
people.
Of course he would feel that way. He found someone that really is embodying it.
I hope so, man.
Yeah.
It's hard to be separate. My attachment desire is right there. Wanting to be, make me cry. Wanting to be, because it's not like the world, or
Right.
That's a weird word, but it's
Well, you feel seen and heard.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what you feel.
To be with people that have woken up, see them, see themselves, their own things, and another person.
Yeah.
It's just okay. It's like it keeps me going a little longer to like, okay, we can do this.
Yep.
We can just keep moving through, and ones that do want to share it in empathy, like that's really important for me.
Yeah.
Like, and then did you ever read William Paul Young's book, Lies We Believe About God? Did you ever read that book?
I didn't read it. I do own it though.
Okay.
But I haven't.
He has a whole chapter on there about the perfection of Christ. And I always think of this. He says that I think it was his grandson came to him and just said, I remember, or he was learning math and he was missing his math. he was doing it wrong. And he just said, he said, I think he probably got math wrong.
Uh-huh.
Because in order to learn how to do it right, you have to do it wrong. Like, you know what I mean? And this is the concept that he could say, like, oh, he probably, and that whole idea of of the overlay we put on it, like, yeah, he knew how to do math perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just our construct, our
assumption.
Yes.
Yeah, our story. Mm-hmm.
And so what is that perfection? Is that he could do math perfectly without being taught? But that's kind of what we put on him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of what we put on him. And that was kind of my experience that I had too. It was like, what it did is it created this side relationship instead of a vertical relationship.
Yep.
Which, and then it becomes so much more relatable because he's here to my side instead of up to my, I don't know.
Yep.
But
what makes him relatable, like you said.
Yeah.
And that's what makes us whole.
Yes.
Right. That's what makes us complete, lacking no parts.
Right. Feel empowered every day with wholeness videos, meditations, downloads, classes, and more by joining the Wholeness Library at thewholenessnetwork.com.